Hi, Riley.
Bell.
How you doing?
Good. I just made popcorn, so I'm eating popcorn before this starts because I haven't eaten
All right. I'm ready.
one.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna actually pause. It's recording right now. Zoom are recording here, and as soon as we broadcast, Raymond and Bob, just so you guys know, if you click participants at the bottom, you'll see people filtering into the attendance. But you guys don't need to manage or worry about that, and
Sure.
we'll take care of getting all the questions. But here we go. I'm gonna hit broadcast.
Great.
Go from there.
We're just starting, so. Yeah. There they go. We should have had some music. So welcome everybody. There are, we'll wait a couple minutes while our attendees log in and get started. Welcome to our senior speaker Zoom series today. This is our last series for our seniors. We are honored and excited to have our speaker with us today, Mr. Bob Myers, who is the general manager of the Warriors. So we're gonna wait just like a couple more minutes. Attendees are flying in right now, so we don't want them to miss anything. So we'll just wait another minute. There we go. Yeah, this would have been a really great time for some Warriors halftime music. Pretending like we're throwing out t-shirts.
Yeah, hard to do that virtually.
Yeah, no, it's just one we'll have to look forward to when that time comes again. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We still have people logging in, but I want to make sure we use all of our time so that we can get as much great information as possible. So again, welcome everybody to our senior speaker series. My name is Andrea Powers, and I am the Akalani's Associate Principal. We have some really great people here on our screen. We have our senior class officers, our Associate Principal, Mr. Plant, and the person of our hour is Mr. Bob Myers, who is the General Manager of the Warriors. Before Bob talks, I just wanted to take a second to introduce him to all of us. Bob is a graduate of Monte Vista High School, which is local here, and he graduated from Monte Vista High School and walked on at UCLA. By his junior year, he'd earned a scholarship for basketball. He started his career in basketball as a sports agent, eventually was hired as the assistant general manager of the Warriors, and is now taken on his responsibility of the executive director of the Warriors. Not only that, but Bob has won Executive of the Year 2 times. I feel pretty fortunate to have been able to help celebrate that the last couple years. But Bob, thank you so much for being here. We can't tell you how much we appreciate your time and sharing it with the seniors that are on the call. I'd love to toss it over to you. We'd love to hear from you and tell us a little bit about your story and welcome us on.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the students that are watching and listening. So it's a kind of a crazy time for everybody. I'm trying to imagine what it's like for everyone on the call being a senior in high school. First off, I'm sorry that you can't be together. That's got to be difficult, and you guys have worked hard and deserve kind of this time to celebrate and get excited, and not only do that individually, but with each other, and talk about college and talk about what your last 4 years have been like. So I wish you could do that. But there's, at some point in your life, there'll be something in these moments that you look back on, some kind of perseverance that hopefully there'll be some good in there. But I'm sure it's kind of hard to find right now. And I hope you can maybe at your 5-year reunion or whatever it is, you can celebrate together. But I feel bad for you, and I'm sure it must be difficult. So for me, I was nothing special when I was a senior in high school. It was the only time in my life that I was the best at anything. I played basketball, but I was never great. Was never kind of the star of the team. That was the only year that I was the best player on my team. And it was the only year I would ever be the best player on my team, because going to UCLA was not a place I thought I could play basketball. So my senior year, I remember not having a real clue about much, and kind of not loving that. I think felt like I was done with high school. I felt like I was ready to go and leave. I applied to schools kind of all over the country, but I went to UCLA, and I hope for those of you that have made decisions, you got to at least see your campus. Maybe you didn't, and that's got to be hard too. My nephew had to decide between a couple schools, and he didn't get to visit one of them, but he chose to go there. And we talked about it a little bit. He's a senior at San Ramon, and I just told him, I wish you could do what I did, which was I went to my school and just walked around, and I thought this is the place to go. And it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of like, why do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend? It's not one thing all the time. It's more of a feeling. And so my senior year, I obviously was focused on sports and wanted to go to college, had good grades, and wasn't as accomplished as many of you probably watching on this call. So don't feel like if you haven't made a mark your senior year that you can't in your life, or don't feel like if you did make a mark right now that you obviously will. There's such a long journey ahead of you, but that's exciting. And I think I had a good attitude about that. And so then when I got to UCLA, I was offered the opportunity to walk on the basketball team, which I showed up on campus and I asked where the crew team was, which is rowing. My brother rowed at Washington. And I thought, I want to do something in college beyond just going to school. I'd like to be involved in something. And I played sports in high school. And so as I was walking through the athletic department at UCLA, I ran into the guy named Steve Lavin, who was the third assistant coach. And my dad and I were together, and he said, what are you guys looking for? I said, we're looking for the crew coach. He said, I don't know if we even have a crew team. We might, but it would be a club team. And I said, well, where's that coach? And he said, I don't even know. And so my dad, looking at the cubicle that this coach sat in, said, oh, you coached at Purdue. And my dad went to Purdue, grew up in Indiana. And so they started talking. And after a few minutes, the assistant coach said, hey, why don't you try to play basketball here? And I said, I don't think I can play at UCLA. I said, nobody recruited me. And these guys are too good. And he said, well, what if we let you try out? And I said, well, I'd appreciate that, but maybe I could just be a manager. And he said, no, try out for the team. And this is a true story. I probably needed somebody to give me confidence. I was probably a little short in that area, but to be fair, I had no reason to believe that I could play basketball at UCLA. By the fact that no other school recruited me, and I knew who the players were at UCLA, and they were 10 times better than me. And so, long story short, they let me condition with the team, and then I made the team as a walk-on. I got to travel, and it was probably the first time in my life that I realized, you can do things that you didn't think you were capable of. But there's no secret to it. It's almost like your motto there, Don, show up. I showed up. I worked hard my whole life. That's the one thing I probably had done, was work hard. So I ended up making the team, and I kept working, and I liked the work that was required. And over time, I got better and better. And I ended up starting a few games my senior year. I played in most every game my senior year, and most of them my junior year. We won a national championship my sophomore year. I didn't play much on that team, but through that experience, it opened up a ton of doors for me. I met a lot of people that never would have dreamed of meeting. Got an internship at a sports agency. A guy named Untitled hired me through my college coach, who recommended I meet. And I didn't really want to be a sports agent. I just wanted to stay in sports. I just felt like I wanted to be around basketball. I wasn't good enough to play anymore. And one of the first days interning, I looked over and walked into the office, and there was Kobe Bryant sitting in the chair, and he had a Joe Montana retro jersey on. And I'll never forget that day, and thought, wow, the people I'm going to get to meet in this job is pretty amazing. And why does that matter? If you surround yourself with some accomplished people and you prove yourself to just be a really decent, hardworking person, the network that it provides can really elevate you. And so through that, I remember my first days on the job. I had a business degree at UCLA, and I had a choice. I had also interned at a company called Bear Stearns, which was a financial company and kind of like financial advisor, and much safer pathway out of college, having a business degree at UCLA. If I were my own parents, and obviously being a parent now, and my child had asked me, what do you think I should do, Dad? I got this internship, or I got this job at Bear Stearns, or I can go intern for the sports agency, and I don't really even know what I would do. I would not have advised my kid to go the sports agency route. I was making $2,000 a month with no health insurance, and that was it. And I remember sitting in the office, and I didn't have an office. I had a conference room, and I had no phone. And I remember thinking, maybe one day the phone will ring for me, and somebody will ask me to do something. But I started at the very bottom. I'd pick up guys from airports and all the work that the basic stuff, and had a pretty demanding boss who challenged me and made sure I did things right. And it was enlightening, and it was powerful, and the network was powerful. And through that, I met some of really high profile people in sports. And then through Danny Ainge, who is the president of the Celtics, the Boston Celtics basketball team, he introduced me to Joe Lacob, who owns the Warriors. And I went in to meet with Joe, and I remember meeting with him, and we talked about everything but a job for me. But I said, look, I grew up in the Bay Area. I'd love a chance to work with the Warriors. I think I could help. And he said, how? I said, look, I don't know. I think there's a skill set I have through being an agent. I understand the business side of it, and I think I could be of value. And to his credit, he said, yeah, let's go. And so he made me an assistant GM, then a year later, general manager. And that was 9 years ago. And the Warriors have been, I grew up watching the Warriors, and I am happy for all the fans and all the people in the community that are fans or not fans. And just the fact that the Warriors are back to being, or are a respectable brand. That's all I wanted to ever do for the Warriors. I sometimes joke, I think I would have enjoyed the Warriors' success more as a fan than I have as being to it, because you'll see it's a little bit like watching a movie and experiencing the joy of your favorite movie, as opposed to working on the set of the movie, where you get to see the whole thing. Sometimes you don't want to see the whole thing. Sometimes the whole thing is hard. Sometimes the whole thing is complicated. There's also gratification in that, kind of in the making of a movie. You know everything that happened, you know all the work that went into it, and you see the success. But there's a blissful naivete to just sitting back and watching it and not worrying about any of that stuff. And so that part for me has been something I kind of joke around to myself about, is I wonder if I'd never gotten the Warriors job and just watched them play and seen what they've done, would I have enjoyed that more? But it doesn't matter. Who knows? Liking the job now. I've got a lot of challenges ahead. We had the worst record in the league this last year, which is, it's part of the humbling. If you're in the business long enough, you're going to have some highs and lows. I've always tried to let my work not become my identity. I think that's one thing I would encourage all of you to do. There's so much emphasis on your brand of yourself, or your job, or what you look like, or whatever your platform is in life. In the end, I know a lot of people that are really successful with a lot of money or fame, and I promise you, you're probably happier than they are right now. That's not a line. I mean, that's something I've experienced in my life. And so whatever course you chart, if you love it and you're good at it, first of all, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to probably end up at a high level because you like what you do. And if the money is the thing, if you're that good, you'll probably get the money too. But I would say, and if I were to look back on my life, I never did anything for money. I never did anything for status. When I took the Warriors job, my wife, we lived down in LA, and my wife said, what are you going to do about the media? I said, there's not going to be any media. I said, nobody cares about the Warriors. And she always reminds me of that, and how things have changed. And so, I'll walk down the street and people will recognize, myself because they watch the Warriors a lot, and they're very nice. But that's probably one of my least favorite parts of the job. One of the things I most love is anonymity. I think there's so many people craving attention, and trust me, if you really get that, it's there's a nice thing about just going through life without everybody watching your every move. There's a goodness to that too. Steph Curry, for the most part, is probably a prisoner in many capacities. We went to a father-daughter dance one time in the city, and he doesn't want to take security with him everywhere, just because it's awkward. You probably have it. You get used to kind of wondering if one of you was very famous, would you have a security guard? And your first reaction is going to be like, no, I don't need that. Well, after the 50th time somebody has asked you for your autograph while you're eating dinner with your family, you might say, you know what, I might need somebody to kind of politely say, look, I want to eat dinner with my family. And so he didn't bring anybody, which was fine. And I said, you'll be fine, most likely. These are just dads with their young kids, young daughters for that matter. And he went to the bathroom. He and I had went to the bathroom, and his daughters were left. Actually, I went to the restroom, and I came back, and for whatever reason, me being there might have prevented some people from coming over, but I went to the bathroom and he was sitting there. And in the course of 3 or 4 minutes, a line had formed for his autograph, of kids and dads. And I kind of shook my head thinking, don't people realize he just wants to be here with his kids? And it wasn't anybody's fault. It's not, there was a lot of kids in the line that were thinking, this is Steph Curry. But it's up to the parents to say, listen, he's here with his kids. Let him be here with his kids. He probably doesn't ever get to do that. So yeah, everybody looks at celebrities and says, hey, that's a perfect life. There are no perfect lives. Trust me, they don't exist. So as you go through life, don't compare, if you can. And I know it's harder in your generation of media, but it doesn't do you any good. Live your life, make mistakes, fail, succeed. Part of the reason I think for my success, if you want to call it however you define success, is that I did it by myself. I got the jobs I got into college by myself. I got on the basketball team by myself. I got my job by myself. I did it all. And you might say, well, and I probably did it too much by myself looking back. I know my parents are together. They're great. I have a great relationship with them. I kind of developed this thing by the time I was your age, like, I don't need anybody's help. I'm doing it by myself. Probably to my own detriment. I probably should have kind of collaborated and at least shared in my stuff more, but I was always, I learned too early, this is my life. And I'm going to live it how I want to live it. And I'm going to go the path I want to go. And look, it works, but going back, I probably could have shared some of my decisions better. So, in any event, that's me. Probably talked for too long there, but happy to answer any questions. I know there's some, Andrea, that you already have, and if anybody wants to ask any about Warriors or my life or college or jobs, anything is fine.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's really nice to hear your story. I'm going to kick it over to our 2 senior officers who are going to lead the Q&A for you. So Riley and Lauren, if you guys want to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, so our first question for you is, did you know that this was the job you wanted? And maybe not for the Warriors specifically, but being a general manager of a team.
Yeah, no, I didn't know this was the job I wanted. Like I said, I just wanted to be around the game of basketball. And I knew when I'd done the sports agent thing for about 14 years, and I knew I didn't want to do that anymore. And I thought that the Warriors, having grown up here, and the fact that I thought the team could be good at some point. It was a great challenge. It probably wasn't economically very smart. I took less money, but yeah, I didn't know. I didn't have a dream. I mean, some of you listening or watching might have a dream to do something. I didn't have that. I only knew one thing. I didn't want to sit at a desk. That's the only thing I knew.
Awesome. I'll ask the next one. So one of them you kind of already answered, so we're going to skip that one. But we, the senior class, are graduating at a time with a lot of unknowns and during a pandemic. So what advice would you have for us as we leave Akwelani's and pursue next steps? You also sort of talked about that, but maybe you could just go back to that.
Yeah. Look, the pandemic thing is tough. It's a hard thing, but you develop more of yourself in adversity than in success. So this will harden you. Unfortunately, it's not fun, but your perseverance through this will give you confidence in your life to kind of move through the next big thing. It's unfortunate. I wish it didn't happen for you or anybody, but I think as you grow and you leave high school, what you'll learn is the most important thing you own in your life is your name. And it may not feel that way now, but as you move through your life, when you say Riley or Lauren, there's going to be, when you're discussed or thought about or potentially hired, there you have a reputation, and that is what's going to determine your course. And it may not feel like that, but as you move through life, that's what's going to open doors for you or close doors for you or allow you new opportunities. So you build your name, and you build it slowly. I don't think you do through shortcuts and skip steps. Over time, it's like pounding a rock. And good person, hardworking, treats people well, doesn't think they're better than anybody, but doesn't think they're worse. And develop that self-confidence, not arrogance, but self-confidence in yourself, because everybody's attracted to authenticity. We all like people that are just real, whether they're successful or famous or rich or poor. We don't like people that are disingenuous. Deep down, we can't connect with those people. So your reputation, your character is the most important thing. And it's the hardest thing to protect, because you can work for 20 years and one mistake, you can kind of tear it down. But the better you do it, the more equity you build, so you'll be allowed to make mistakes. So to me, it's just, who are you? What are your values? How do you treat your friends? How do you treat people in your life? And I think that's the most important thing. I mean, you could be, I always use this vision of what we perceive as these people that are wildly successful, kind of eating by themselves Thanksgiving dinner. And you think like, that person's got it all figured out. And you go, but they're not close to their family. They may be divorced. They don't have any friends. That's another path. So just your relationships, your character, your values, I think, are the things that kind of work the most on.
And then, so you lead the Warriors organization with a lot of people in it and a lot of talent. What is your secret to leadership?
I think to lead, there's a lot of different ways to lead. There's leading through fear. People are afraid because your title is, you might be afraid of your principal just because they're the principal. That isn't the best way to lead, in my opinion, just because the title is the principal and they have the most power. You try to lead, you want to lead in a way where people want to follow you. They don't have to follow you, they want to follow you. And so how do you do that? How do I try to do that? I just try to be, first of all, real with people, whether it's, Draymond Green, when I don't like something he did, I tell him, and I risk pissing him off, and maybe he is pissed off, but I have to be honest about how I feel. He's got to be honest to how he feels, and just like anybody in the organization. And again, it's about consistency of character. And I think when I lead, over time, you earn the respect of people, because what I try to do as well, and Steve Kerr is great at, is it's not about me. I think a lot of leaders try to make it about them. and people can see right through that. If you are leading in a way where it's for your own purposes only, and you don't care about who you are basically leading, and I think you're setting yourself up for failure. I think one guy that I listened to about leadership, Simon Sinek, whose last name is Sinek, he said, you're not in charge of your employees, they're in your charge. Meaning, like, the people I work with and they work quote unquote underneath me are in my charge. They're my responsibility. So if you look at it from that vantage point, when we win a championship, I always told our players, I try to build the best team I can for them. I don't win. A lot of people look at it differently. I have these big rings that are sitting down in my safe that are so big you can't even. I should have brought one of them to show everybody. They're like this big. You can't, like, fitting them. It's like a huge rock. But I take the ring and I'm excited about it. But I have always been of the mind that the players are the ones that win those things, and I believe that. It's not a line. So when the players feel like you're just there to support them, you get a much more openness from them. And so everybody leads a little differently. The last part I would say is be yourself. Your style is your style. I don't try to lead like other people lead. That doesn't work for me. I lead how I lead. And I think over time that works.
And then, so we imagine that being the GM of the Golden State Warriors is exciting yet stressful with a high level of pressure on success. How do you deal with this, and what are some of your strategies?
Yeah, it's the media stuff and the weight of a community is that may be hard. That's, you go to a game and when we lose, you feel like it's your fault with 20,000 people in the arena, or somebody writes an article and says we suck. You kind of, it's hard to kind of deflect on that. So what I've done, and I haven't done this, I did this before this job. My job is not who I am. So to criticize the Warriors, yeah, I may feel that to a certain degree because I have a responsibility to try to put the players together. But it's not really it's not really criticizing me, because the people that are writing about it and talking about it don't know me. They know what they think of me, but they don't know me. They haven't known what I'm about, really. So you have to remind yourself that when there's pressure, it's really perceived pressure because it's a game. It's people care a ton about it, but in the end, I'm not a better person because the Warriors won a championship, and I'm not a worse person because we had the worst record in the league this season. It's neither of those things. It's who you are when the job is over. Everybody listening, you're gonna have a lot of jobs. Some may be perceived as more important than others. Some may be so under the radar that only you know the value that you're providing. But the best part is you do know. When you go to bed at night, you know what you're doing. It doesn't matter what other people know or don't know. Some people crave attention and notoriety. I never thought that mattered that much, or I don't think that mattered that much, is because I'm the one that's got to live with myself. So I try to do things the right way. And yeah, there's pressure for sure. Mostly pressure I put on myself to just try to, if it was a job where nobody was watching or paying attention, I'd probably still put the pressure on myself. But I think that part is harder with the amount of people that we're all human. If you were walking down the street, anybody watching, and somebody said, you suck, you'd probably feel that, people think athletes, whoever famous people don't hear any of that stuff. They do. We're people, but I've never been in my life before this job, and I don't think after. I've never had a Facebook account. I've never been on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter account. I never did. I don't have an Instagram. I don't have any of that stuff. And that's not to say I'm against it. It's more of your life and how you grew up. And the reason for me it doesn't work is I just want to focus on the things that are right in front of me. And I like seeing people. That's what's so hard about me about this. I like interacting with people in person. I find that's the most enjoyable thing that I get to do in my job, is sit across from somebody and develop a relationship. And I don't feel like, with all the different distractions of looking at a little soundbite, a little video, that doesn't connect for me. That doesn't feel like a connection. for me, although it might for you, and that's totally fine. And I also don't have enough time in my life to just be with my kids and my wife and think about things. I don't want to be distracted. I want to think about, is this the job I want? I'm being a good dad. I'm being a good husband. My kids doing okay? Am I raising my daughters in this climate? When should I get my oldest daughter a phone? What should we do with that? And so those things don't serve me well, but that doesn't mean they don't serve you well. But I've yet to meet anybody that is unaffected by those things. And most of the time, it's you have to have such high level of discipline to manage those social media platforms and not feel like they're more than they are. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't do a lot of that stuff, and I find it works for me.
Awesome. Thank you. And the last question we're going to ask, and then we'll switch over to Q&A from the attendees, is just how is the pandemic affecting the Warriors and your job? And like, what are some of the new difficulties that it's presented for your job?
Well, again, like I said, we're used to kind of interacting every day. I mean, we're like picture yourself going to your class of 30 people. I know you probably have more than one teacher, but picture going to the same room every day for 8 hours with those 30 people. That's what we do. And in the course of it, obviously they're getting coached, they're playing, but there's a lot of conversations. There's one goal to win a championship. So we're really disconnected right now. We had a few Zoom calls, but that's not the same for us. We don't know when we're playing again. We don't know if we're playing again. And I think it's tough to connect for us. It's just a different thing. We're used to a structure of seeing each other, talking to each other, a very organic thing. So we're not a job that works well remotely. We're not set up. That's not, and by the way, that's not a job I wanted anyway. I know people may say they like working from home. That's fine. I don't. I want to see people. I want to be around people. I want to get to know people. I want to watch them succeed and fail. So for us, it's hard. It's hard to kind of navigate it without knowing what's next. I miss a lot of the guys. I miss the coaches. I mean, there's people that you guys may not talk to during this time that you liked seeing at school, or teachers or people that you've been around. And that's what you miss. There's a lot of assistant coaches. We have a bigger group of people than the players. So I miss seeing them. I look forward to, maybe the silver lining is I'll appreciate that part when it comes back more, but it will. For now, we just kind of do the best we can with which is what you guys are doing with Zoom and just kind of phone calls and things like that.
So another question from Matt Monacola is, what major would you recommend for someone who wants to go into your line of work?
Yeah, my nephew asked me something like that, and I said, any major you want. If I looked at all the general managers, and at least in basketball, they got all kinds of different majors. I mean, to be honest, maybe psychology, which you'd think is not one of them, but don't you can do this job that I do with any major. You don't need to. I did business, but I don't use that, so to speak. I went to law school after college. I probably use the law school part more, whether it's a contract, understanding legal language. I use that. But as far as college, I could have been a major in anything. And so did all the other GMs. If you line them up, they're not all business majors. You have one chance in your life to go to college. I would take some time. If you don't have anything to do right now, think about think about a class or a major that as you're walking to that class, you're excited. I was not excited walking to my accounting classes and my history of economics and business, but maybe you are, and that's great. But I really, in hindsight, I liked English the most. I took an English class my freshman year and just got the professor just crushed my I think we had to write a review of something, and it kind of sent me the wrong. I kind of said, well, I'm not doing this, which was a mistake. I still really like I read all the time, literature and fiction and nonfiction. So whatever you think moves you, because that's You don't have to have a career in it. If you really want to get specialized, you can do that post college. You can go to business school, you can go to law school, you can get a master's in something. Figure out what you want to do and what kind of your heart tells you to do, and do that.
Awesome. Thank you. So this next question's from Saul. He's our basketball coach. And it says, you've played for Jimmy Herrick, Steve Lavin, and you
Yep.
worked alongside Steve Kerr. Is there something you've learned from any or all of them that you find valuable and would like to share?
Yeah, they're all different guys. I mean, two of those guys one is my college coach for my first 3 years, and then one of them was my college coach my senior year. Coach Herrick was my coach freshman to junior year, and then Lavin my senior year, and then Coach Kerr obviously is the Warriors coach. I think what you learn is leadership. There's not too many ways to coach a basketball team, as Saul knows. I mean, you can guard a certain way, and you can play a certain kind of offense. But for the most part, you want your team to listen to you and follow you and get better. And so it's really, how do you teach and communicate? And they all communicated differently. Coach Herrick, my first coach, was kind of one of those people that I didn't really see how good he was until he left, because he just did the same things over and over and over again until you were really good at them. Lavin was much more emotional, inspirational, much more creative in certain ways, as far as we're going to change things on the fly. And Kerr's got so many layers to him. Obviously, he played. He was a GM. He's now clearly our coach, but there's just the person and how his humility of dealing with these athletes and meeting them on their level is fascinating to watch. He's really good. I mean, they're all good and they're all unique in their own way, but I've learned from all of them in whether playing for those other two or just working alongside Steve.
And then a question from Trig Boren. He said, nowadays the job market and internship market is super competitive. What advice would you give kids who get rejected from jobs/internships?
Keep doing it. I sent all these tapes to colleges. I wanted to play basketball somewhere, and nobody really even replied. And I ended up at UCLA. I didn't really want to be. I worked in a job for 13, 14 years as an agent that I didn't really set out to do. I just wanted to be around it. It'd be like wanting to be in entertainment and working as a cameraman, and didn't really love that for 13 years until somebody tapped you and said, you want to be a director. So I think what is challenging now is, and I don't want to push back on your specific generation, but be patient. Be patient. Just keep at it. And even in the process of being refused or failing, you're going to learn a lot. And I promise you, if you present yourself well, I've had people call me 4 or 5 years down the line or reference a situation, and in my situation, it worked out. And if you look back on your life, I can connect all these dots in my life to show where I've ended up. Well, I made an impression on my head coach, who allowed me to get an internship, my head coach at UCLA, who then helped me get an internship with a sports agent, Arn Tellem, who then introduced me to Danny Ainge. Then Danny had liked me enough to introduce me to Joe Lacob. And so that's because I presented well. That's not because of any other reason. I didn't skip all the steps and end up as the Warriors general manager. It was 15 years in the workforce and 4 years of law school of going at night and just kind of moving in a direction and developing my skills and having fun doing it. I mean, I liked law school. Was challenging. I would go to work in the morning, and then I'd go leave at 3:00 to drive down to downtown LA, and then I'd go meet my clients after the Lakers games. I had no life. I mean, I didn't watch TV for 4 years. I'd study on planes when I was going to see clients, and but I loved it. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And so I think you just keep pushing, keep at it, and just keep showing yourself well.
Awesome. Thank you. This one is not basketball related, but it says, what are your favorite things to do during your downtime, your hobbies and things like that?
Yeah, I don't, when you have young kids, I don't think any of you do, maybe you do, but if you do, then they take up a lot of time. So I guess kind of connecting with my kids, I got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old daughters. And so just kind of watching them grow and trying to be a good dad and getting to know them and seeing how their little minds work. But if I have free time, I'll read as much as I can, and then just kind of question, I'm always thinking about what's next, what's now, what's the right way to do something, what should I be doing, what shouldn't I be doing, kind of things I think I'm doing right, things I'm doing wrong, whether it's with our team or in any capacity. So if I do have time, maybe it's working out if I can, or just kind of reading. I like to read. It's all types of things.
Question from Jack Miles. Most people would say the biggest decision you had to make. Oh, disappeared. Okay, sorry. Most people would say the biggest decision you had to make as the Warriors GM was hiring Steve Kerr as head coach. What made you think he was the best fit for the job? And just in general, what do you factor in when hiring coaches?
Yeah, Steve checked so many boxes. We'd obviously let go of a good coach. Mark Jackson was doing a good job when we hadn't been in the playoffs in forever. He took us to the playoffs, and we just made a decision that we wanted to try something else. And so Steve presented himself and was so prepared in the meeting, and was just a good, decent guy. I mean, he showed he prepared for it. He'd played in the NBA a long time, and had taken kind of wasn't the most talented guy, so kind of had to create a real strong work ethic. He was a general manager in Phoenix, then he was a broadcaster, so he had done a lot of these different things as around basketball, almost everything. I don't think anything he hadn't done besides referee maybe, but he was tremendous in his interview, his intelligence, his emotional intelligence, just his understanding of the dynamics of a team, of how to move through it, of what failure looked like, what success looked like. So what I look for in coach is, I got asked, actually I talked to Steve about this morning. We were talking, and I said the 4 things I would look for are character, leadership, intelligence, and curiosity. And so character is just, who is the person? And if I'm asking all of you, whose character do you admire in your class or in your group, it's not going to be 50 people. It might be 2 or 3. It's hard to exhibit that kind of strength of character. So if you can find somebody, you're essentially putting them in charge of $150 million of payroll, and also a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, they're the front-facing person of it. They're talking to the media 3 times a day. They're captaining your ship. And so you want them to be a good person. And then secondly, can they lead? And everybody leads differently. You don't have to lead like, being the loudest person in the room, but you have to be respected. And so, clearly Steve checks that box. Intelligence, I want somebody smarter than me. I don't want to think I'm second guessing them and thinking I know more than them, especially if you're hiring a coach. And then curiosity, do they not think they know it all? Are they open? And Steve Kerr could easily, every time I talk to him, he could say, what are you talking about? I got 8 championships. I don't need anybody to tell me anything. In a sense, he's the opposite. He's one of the most inclusive people that I've ever been around. He'll call me and say, I'm thinking about starting this guy tonight, or what do you think about this or that? To the point where I always kind of throw it back at him and say, whatever you want, man, you know what you're doing. But the fact that he collaborates is another trait that is admirable in him. So if I'm looking to hire somebody and put him in charge of people, I think those are the 4 ones that I value probably the most.
So you may or may not be able to answer this question, but what's the craziest Warriors trade that almost happened but didn't?
Why do you think I won't answer it?
I don't know. I don't know if that's sort of like a secret thing, but
what's the craziest trade we never happened? Yeah, it's hard because there wasn't any. A lot of the crazy stuff did happen. Getting Iguodala was something I didn't think was going to happen. We signed a player named Andre Iguodala, which is a huge deal for us. I mean, Durant was somebody that, I mean, a lot of our things did happen. We have to check back in with what didn't happen. I mean, there was reports about stuff we almost did, but most of that's not true. That we were very, very, there was nothing we were really close to doing that was crazy or almost happened. There's stuff that people reported that almost happened, but for a variety of reasons, we were never kind of about to do some of the stuff that people said. Trying to think of the draft, of anybody that we almost drafted but didn't. There's so many different unknowns in it. You know, there's nothing where we tried to do it and the other team kind of wouldn't. I guess we've been lucky or good in that capacity. So no great stories, really.
Awesome. I have the next question from Kat Acuff. And so it says, how do you keep motivation after you've fallen or made a mistake?
I think that's probably the easiest time to motivate is when you screw up or fail. It's harder when you are successful. I mean, I look at the analogy of climbing Mount Everest to win a championship. And, you know, the first time you have this dream of doing it, and then for us, that was 2014, 15, you don't even know if you can because it's so hard. And you hear of other people that have done it, and halfway up, you just can't believe, you know, you still have that much way to go. And then you start questioning it and not believing. But then eventually you do it. And in that first moment, the first time, there's nothing like that. But then in our sport, in our business, you have to start at the bottom again the following year. And then for us, the following year, we climbed all the way up to the top and we lost in game 7 at home. So we were basically 1 foot from the summit, and we got kind of kicked back down. So then the following year, you climb it again, and we won it that year, and we won it the year after. But the motivation comes from, obviously, the feeling of winning is so intoxicating, and just it's hard to describe. That you just want to do it again. But when you lose badly, you do remotivate, because you remember we didn't even get halfway up the mountain. I mean, that wasn't even a try. Like this year, we obviously having the worst. We're not making the playoffs. So you do motivate yourself again and say, you know what, we gotta focus and get back on that climb. And I think it's easier when you've actually fallen harder.
What is the most rewarding part of your job?
The most rewarding part, I would say, is the people I get to meet and the relationships I get to form. It's people that I would never have maybe met in my life, that are trying to do something special in a very competitive environment. There's people like our owners that have been wildly successful in different walks of life. There's people that grew up with nothing, some of our players that have overcome, and we joke around about what it was like to grow up in Danville versus Saginaw, Michigan, and kind of the differences in our childhoods and things like that. There's a diversity that I would have never had. Going to Monte Vista when I was young, there was probably 2 black kids, and mostly homogenous white upbringing, which in professional sports, the beauty of it for me is the diversity of it, and all the different people I get to interact with. It's something I probably wouldn't have gotten it done had I done something different. But mostly the relationships, mostly getting to know people and going through, you know what it is, if any of you have gone off to like, not boarding school because you're in high school, but like a lengthy summer camp where at the end of it, you feel like you went through stuff with people, or you're on a team in high school, but times that by 100 because your whole day is with your team, and you can't imagine the bonds that are created in those moments and the relationships that are formed. I mean, I had a Zoom call with the guys that we won the championship with at UCLA, and it's been 25 years since we won. We won in 1995, and immediately you reconnect with these people because of what you went through with them. And unless you have some kind of connection like that, it's hard. I mean, imagine if one of this, you know, maybe Al-Kalani's won a state championship. Maybe some people on the call did that together. I promise you that bond of experience will be with you your whole life. It may not feel like that now. I'm still close to my high school basketball teammates because of what we went through together. And so on a professional team, it's that times 100, because there is no classes, there's nothing else. It's just your job, it's your sport. And so that's my favorite part, is knowing that I'm making some friends. And you really find out, in most jobs, you can't find out that much about the person when you're not really in these moments of high pressure. But when you're going through these things like we go through in success or failure with the scrutiny we go through, you really find out who somebody is. And when you do, you see some wonderful things. Finding out, everybody thinks Steph Curry's, all he's been is praised his whole life. That's not true. I mean, the guy's been criticized plenty and often. And just to watch how he moves through that and processes it as much as the credit, it's fascinating to kind of get to know these people.
Awesome. I'm going to kind of combine two questions, but one from Cat Gunn is, is the team really close and do they hang out regularly? And then also, I'm going to combine that with Murphy Baker's question. How do you manage differing personalities on the team and help them to work together towards a championship?
Yeah, I mean, the team's close. I think that every level of sport you get less close because people are different ages and come from different backgrounds, and some have families, some don't. In high school, you're all kind of coming from the same place or the same age. In college, it starts getting a little bit harder because, like I said, different ages, different backgrounds, coming from all over, different motivations. And then in the NBA or professional sports, it's even harder because everybody's, yes, we want to do the same thing, but one guy might be 35 and one guy's 20, and they just don't have the same interests. Not bad or good, it's just what it is. But they're very close. I mean, I think Steph is very approachable. Clay, I mean, they're all good guys, so they treat the young guys well, and they get along. I mean, they all kind of complement each other. It's a little bit like a band where they've been together so long and been through things so long that it just works. And bringing new guys in, if myself and our front office draft and sign the right guys, they hopefully fit, and that's our job to make it fit. But yeah, the guys are close, and obviously the more you play with a guy, the longer you do, and the better you do, the closer you are. The guys that have won championships together are probably closer. And then what was the second question? It was the closeness, and what was the other one?
It was, how do you manage teammates that are have differing personalities?
Oh yeah, you just like anybody. I mean, you don't treat anybody the same in your life, I don't think. I mean, even your friends, they're not the same. You might talk to one friend a certain way and another friend another way. One person might be more sensitive, one might be more of somebody that jokes around, one might be more serious, one might have interests outside of another person. So I think you just meet people at their level. You don't try to dominate conversations, you listen. I always commend our guys. They're so used to being the center of attention that I often think they forget how to have relationships. So if Steph or somebody asks me a question, I'll say, that's nice. You asked a question. Good job. You're learning how to be a human being. It's because it's not even their fault. They're so used to everybody worrying about them that all of a sudden you fall back into this, well, maybe it is about me, not even intentionally. So you have to keep your relationship skills. So when a player says, how's your kids, or this or that, that's what relationships need. They need a back and forth. It's not a one-way deal. And so I try to just be a normal guy and talk to them. And they're all different. Draymond's different than Clay, is different than Andrew Wiggins, is different than Pascal or Curry or all these guys. They're all different. So you just try to meet them at their level and just be yourself. And some guys you connect with more than others, and that's just what it is.
All right, so we have two more questions for you. So second to last question. How do you go about evaluating players for the NBA draft, especially during quarantine? Sort of how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to we're looking to hire somebody. I know it's called the draft, but basically we're hiring somebody. And without talking to them in person, it's hard. So at some point we'll probably get on the Zoom and talk to them like this. Maybe hopefully see them at some point when we're allowed to do that. Normally we'd be at a combine right now, where like the NFL combine, we get to go to a certain place. We go to Chicago and they're all working out, or we can interview them there. But it's tougher now. It's harder to get to know somebody electronically through a computer than it is in person. Obviously, we can watch film on them, things like that, but it's not perfect. So we'll have to do the best we can with whatever vehicles we have. And luckily, we got to see most of these guys during the season. But I don't think we got to see them as much as we wanted to. I think we'd love to see more.
Awesome. So last question. I know we kind of talked about this before the call, but are there any updates or a timetable of when the NBA is going to be coming back?
Yeah, I wish I knew that answer. There isn't, and I hope that there will be. I think the commissioner said in the next 3 to 4 weeks or something. I think everybody's still processing what's going on in the communities, and I know I live in San Francisco, and what's open, what isn't, when will it be, we don't know. And I think it seems like when we come back, doesn't seem like there'll be fans, is what everybody's saying, which makes sense, I suppose. How they're going to do it, I think they're talking about all that stuff now. When they're going to do it, I bet if we did this call a month from now, I'd probably know that answer. Maybe 2-3 weeks, but right now I don't know any more than anybody else that's watching. So wish I could tell you more.
I do want to throw in one last question. Bob, it's Andrea. What's the one thing you can't wait to do when this is all over?
I want to see people, like shake somebody's hand, give them a hug, like see my see my brother and sister and my parents. I drove by my parents' house in Alamo and kind of did the 10 feet away deal. Like that's not life. I mean, that's not, we're all doing a good job kind of dealing with this stuff. But I think that I said to somebody, I said, I feel like the dessert of life has kind of been taken. We're getting our food, we're eating, we're getting full, but the fun part is when the dessert comes to the table and you get all excited. Like I feel like we got that taken away for a little while. And I love dessert, but I think I just will miss the waking up and not knowing where I'm going to go that day. Like what's going to happen? I walk in the office, and I don't know sometimes it's not great.
Yeah.
Like you go to school, it's like, what's the problem now? Who did what?
Yeah.
Just the kind of chaos of life. I mean, I feel like this is great. I'm probably more for me, I probably shouldn't complain because I have a job, I have a home. I'm not worried about that part. I got young kids to occupy me. It's not fair for me to be critical of this, but I do miss people just going to the coffee shop and ordering a cappuccino and looking at the person that's making it and, stuff like that. I don't know. What do you think? What's yours?
I would have to say probably the same thing. Like I miss the day-to-day stuff, the stuff that even the little things that I would have maybe gotten frustrated with before. Now I'm like, wow, I actually really enjoyed that part of the day-to-day, the chaos of the day. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that. I miss seeing my kids participate in activities and cheering them on. And I miss, just that, like you said, the human contact at school. You really create a family in the job that you're at or the school that you're at. And that's been the hardest part about it is you're not with your family every day.
Yeah.
It's been hard to be apart from.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I can't thank you enough for this. I've heard you say it before, but when you talk about the most important thing in your life is your name, it is such an amazing tip and piece of advice for these seniors and for anyone for that matter, just what your name represents. And that's a huge part of as you guys go off into college and wherever your next step is, to remember that. It's a wonderful piece of advice. So thank you so much, Bob. I'll say it again and again, can't thank you enough for your time and for Mr. Plant is back. And
he's back. I thought we cut him off.
Yeah, we did.
Sure.
I was quarantined. We didn't quarantine for a while, but yeah, I made it.
Yeah.
We need to add another layer of quarantining for you, like another beyond beyond the 6 feet, like a,
Yeah.
you know.
I think pretty much everyone feels that way, Bob. So
No, no, it's people were just so excited to hear your name and to be able to talk with you. So thank you so much. Good luck with the season, whatever we have of it, and what's coming up. But go Dons, Dons show up. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Bob. Thanks, girls.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Lauren.
you.
Thanks, Riley.
Thank you,
All
Bob.
right, guys, take care. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
go
Okay,
Dons,
bye.
go Dubs.